Everybody. Oh my God, I got a guy on the channel today. He's smooth. Let me tell you something. He got one of them voices that y'all gonna like this, boy. He gonna tell you some stuff and it's gonna be melodic on your mind. Because on Strong Inspirations, we give it to you straight, no chaser. We intoxicate your mind with this good Black history. Where I find, and hold on, I being Anthony Brogdon, the host of the show, I get lucky, like with this guy, to find these conscious experts, good people to come on the show and to spend their time so that you can learn something new. That you're gonna really like this one. Watch. This is gonna be good. I'm super excited that he has decided to come on the show. So let me tell you what I want y'all to do, my friends. Hit the subscribe button. It's free. It don't ask no information. It just let me know you like me, because I like you already. And ain't nothing you can do about it. Hit the like button on this video. You're gonna like it a lot. I promise you that. Hit the notifications bell for when the videos come up. You get a ding, a shock, or something that lets you know that there is new content on Strong Inspirations. And we are growing immensely because of the guests that, like this gentleman, that come on the show, and the viewers like you who watch us. And then do this, my friends. Tell somebody about Strong Inspirations. Don't keep it to yourself. I really believe there is no other place that you can get the type of content that you get on this show with a host like me, that I think I do my very best to ask intelligent questions for free. It don't cost you nothing to watch it. Tell them schools in your neighborhood, in your community, in your city, in your state, go to Strong Inspiration. And I don't mean just for Black History Month. This is 24/7. You can watch these videos whenever you want to, and you can scroll and go to the point that you want to go to. You can get past me. Got no problem with it. And get straight to the guest. Do that, my friends. I appreciate it, because, like, did you see the one I did with the guy who goes in the pyramids in Africa and tells you, he shows pictures out of his book of what's in there? Watch that video. Did you see the one I did with the sister who talks about what Black women have gone through since slavery? The history of it? Watch that video. Did you see the one where we talk about Madam C.J. Walker's great-great-granddaughter? Yes, that's true. She's on the show, as is Frederick Douglass's, as is Ida B. Wells, as is Josh Gibson. I'm telling you, this is heavyweight platform here, my friends, and it's Strong Inspirations. We ain't playing with you, so watch those. Go down the list. Pick out one you want to see and watch it as your leisure. You don't have to watch me, because I'm not singing and dancing. I'm just talking, and my guest is also. So you can watch it and listen to it in your car. Put your cell phone on YouTube, go to Strong Inspiration, listen to this good stuff. It's going to inspire you, because that is the mission, to inspire, to educate, and entertain. You're going to really like this guy. There's no question about it, my friends. Now, do a couple more things. Y'all might know I'm a filmmaker. I'm serious about my game, everybody. I don't play with you. 3 years of my life is in this documentary on the rise of Black business in America. Because for somehow, and I thought I was a decent student. I got some A's, some B's, C here and there, and what have you. But they didn't tell me there were enslaved Black folks who own businesses. I never heard that. And when I found that out, I put it in this film, and I tell you the names. That's not all I talk about, but that's huge in itself and worth watching. This. It's streaming on Amazon. Then I went one step further and I wrote the book on it. Boom shakalaka. Here is the book. It's the #1 Black business history book on the market. There is nothing as comprehensive as what I have here for you, my friends. Not just slaves who went to college enslaved, but dang, how did they get an education? What colleges were they going to? I tell you the names. I got all the HBCUs in this book. I got all the ways that Black folks gained their freedom in this book, and some stories that I know you don't know. Get you a copy of this, all right? And when you do, I autograph it. And maybe, I believe, that's going to be worth something, my friends. Watch me. I'm coming at you strong. Now, there's a couple more things. The book is so good, I'm doing a stage play from my book. That's right. It's here in Detroit, but I'm going to take it across the country because I'm spewing this knowledge, getting it out there to you. So it's called They Did It, March 31st through April 1st, 2023, here in Detroit. If you're in this area, come check me out. You're going to like this play. All right? And check it out. I'm going to London, England in October for their Black History Month. I'm going to be speaking over there. I'm international. This is not just a local thing. I got people on the show from all over the world. Now, you hear me use this term strong a lot. Strong is my favorite word. I wish my middle name was Strong. I try to be a strong guy. I can do 20 push-ups. I try to be a strong brother, strong mind, strong on my Christian faith too, everybody. And in my world, strong stands for strength, tenacity, resilience, and a sense of oneness, nobility, and grace. And that is my introduction to the super strong brother on the show today. Come on, my man. I'm happy you on. Let's get it on. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me. It's an honor to be here.
Tell us your name. Tell us your name, please.
Yes. Well, most people know me as Brother Asar, but the full name is Asar Imhotep. I am a researcher originally out of Houston, Texas, but I live in Philadelphia now. And I am trained as a computer scientist and have branched off into linguistics and African. Well, I minored in Africana studies, but been doing Africana studies for the last 20 years, and just have been doing a lot of research along those lines.
I love it. Okay, we're gonna start out. So my guests get to know you just a little bit and ask some questions. Where were you born and raised?
Well, born and raised are simple and complicated at the same time. So I was born in Jacksonville, Florida, but both my parents were in the military, so I moved a lot. So from there to New Orleans, where the bulk of my family on both sides is from Louisiana. So Opelousas, Baton Rouge, New Orleans, that's the hub. But from there, I went to Houston to San Antonio, back to Houston, and been in Philly for, I guess, half of my adult life.
Okay. With that said, and growing up in all those places, is there a difference in Black people that you could tell from one location to the other? And was that difference predicated on the history that came out of that region? How about that one?
I mean, with all people, there's going to be some differences. And everyone is shaped by their history, the culture in the region, the environment, and the times. So while there was some significant differences in particular areas, there was also, of course, major commonalities.
Sure.
And especially when you consider the fact that, for example, like in Texas, Texas has its own, Africana history. But a lot of people from Louisiana move west, going all the way into California, but a lot of them stopped off to Houston. So, especially when you're talking along the lines of like Houston, San Antonio, and like Dallas, everyone has ties to Louisiana. So
Okay.
everybody's going back to visit grandma and
Yeah.
aunties, and
Yeah.
and so you can see like there's significant differences, but the cultures kind of blend in that respect. So and it's kind of the same thing like when you come up here, because of course most folks from up here, they family out in Alabama, Virginia, North Carolina,
Right.
and
Right.
the great migrations northward, going into Chicago, going into Detroit,
Right.
and the like. So
Sure.
you bring, you see some sense of familiarity. And matter of fact, when I came to Detroit around, no, it was a little bit later. I think it was in May of last year. That was my technically I've been to Detroit a number of times, because when you're flying from Texas, uh, one of the stops is in Detroit, or you can go
Okay.
via Atlanta
Yeah.
uh,
Yeah.
uh,
Okay.
to get into Philly. So I've been technically in Detroit,
Yes.
at least the
Yes.
airport, for a
Yes.
number of times, but I only stepped out of the airport one time, and that was last year. And
Yes.
so I got to hang around with a couple of the folks and one thing, and I said it's like real familiar in terms of the personality and the vibe of the people. It just reminds me of New Orleans, even though it doesn't have the, New Orleans, like but in terms of like vibes and energy, like the people of
Yeah.
Detroit remind me of folks in New
I
Orleans.
got you. I got you. Now growing up all over, does that allow you to establish a base someplace? And was your base always around Black people, or being in the military, you saw people from all the different nationalities?
Yeah, I really didn't, not until like high school when I was in San Antonio, ironically, was, I existing in a predominantly, African American neighborhoods, schools, and like, and then of
Oh,
course hanging out in adulthood. But those earlier years, it was just like um, how you mentioned, more diverse
okay.
in these particular areas. So you notice some differences, and you get familiar with different people, different cultures,
Yeah, sure.
different histories and the like. So, but of course, I always gravitated, towards my peoples, and
Okay. I love it. Let me ask you this. Have you done the research as to, do you know where the plantation is in your family?
the plantation. It really kind of depends. Um, on my dad's mother's side, I have a lot more information,
Yeah.
and because everything seems to stem in Opelousas, and we have records, detailed records there. But on my mom's side, no.
Okay.
And then my mom's dad side, I haven't done too much research there, but he's from New Orleans, directly in his family. And so, but I do know, regardless, on both my mom and my dad's mom side, I don't know about my dad's side, so that's a
Right.
blur.
Yeah.
But both of those lineages derive from Haiti, and
Oh, okay.
so those after the Haitian Revolution, about, what was it, about like 30,000 Haitians, moved to Louisiana, excuse me, in New Orleans in particular, but different
Okay.
spots in Louisiana. So that contributes majorly to the culture that
Yeah,
emerges.
sure. Sure.
Uh,
Now, w- given that growing up in the military, did you learn Black history as a kid? Was it taught in any of your schooling or something like that?
Not really, um, but there, you had outliers. So like there was my sixth grade geography teacher. Um, she would sneak it in, you know.
Mm. So you remember
So
that?
Yeah, I do remember that
Yeah,
because
yeah.
again, in those early years growing up, I lived in places where there wasn't many of us. So of course you always wondered, but my dad and my parents, they just didn't have that kind of consciousness nor, historical background to like give me any information. And so they
Okay,
were more so trying, I would consider them integrationists in
okay,
the sense. So
okay,
they recognized it, but it wasn't something that
okay.
was discussed. So in many respects, that kind of fueled the hunger to know more.
Oh, really?
You know,
Because that was going to be my next question. Sometimes when people grow up in under that occasion, let's say, then black people can lose themselves. That's not what happened to you. You wanted to learn more.
exactly. That's exactly what happened. So and matter of fact, um, like high school is a little different because again, now I'm in um, a predominantly black neighborhood in high school. So some things were taught, but there was no real curriculum. And even when I went to Southwest Texas State University, directly after high school, there was no Black Studies program. There was no African American Studies department. So we had to. There was a group of guys. Um, they were members of Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated, but they got kicked off the campus for hazing, right? And so, but they were allowed to still go to school. And so what they did instead was form another organization called Kumasi.
Hmm.
And so because they wanted to still keep black program because there was nothing like there's no sign of any kind of black studies at this school. And so, basically we were a research and study group. And, we just studied on our own. And then every Wednesday we would, invite students from the campus and we would just teach what we learned. And then as more people would come in, we would assign them reading. And like the first 5 minutes, they had to summarize,
Oh, I
what they
love
learned.
it.
So, that's how, we got our fix there. But some years later, I transferred to the University of Houston. And there they actually had a Black Studies program, not a department yet. So you could minor in African American studies. And at the time I was doing accounting. That was my focus. And so uh, I messed up.
Mhm.
Ultimately, it wasn't a mess up, but I messed up
Okay.
because in my when I transferred, they told me that uh, I had to minor. The way they had it set up, you had to minor in either African studies, Latin studies, or Asian studies. So it's part of like
Okay.
a kind of an international,
Okay.
you know. Um, but for some reason, I didn't hear that. I took all African American. I didn't know the African American courses were different from the African studies courses. So I took the 12 hours in African American, and then come to find out none of them counted. So I had to go
Oh,
back
okay.
and take
Okay.
the African studies courses, or I chose African out of the other three options, of course, and so so that accounting in terms of the formal sense of
Yes, I got
this
you.
introduction uh, to the history, culture, and languages and the like.
Well, when you did that and you wanted to take those classes and learn more, did you because you had a thirst for who Black people are, or I haven't gotten it and I'm curious, or it just was the kind of thing that I'm it's inspiring me. I guess there's a question there is why did you do that? What's made you say, given the background, hey, this is where I wanna. There's something piques me in this.
Um, it may sound cliche when people say that I didn't choose this, it chose me,
Okay, I love
you
it.
know, and that's really kind of how it is. Because again, I'm in accounting, in terms of my training. Then I switched to computer information systems, and then
Mm,
advanced it to computer science. So that's kind of the stuff that I do as far as the formal
yes,
pay rent and all
yes,
that other kind of stuff. But
yes.
the Africana studies has always just been there, even since I was little. So it's
Is
just something that's compelled.
is there a particular topic of Africana studies that you like and you talk about, that you've researched more than others? Because I can be
Yeah.
somewhere and I tell people I talk about Black history, and then they could throw a name at me that somebody happened in their town. You're like, oh, you
Yeah.
don't know that one, then you ain't that good. Is there something that in particular interests you in the under Africana studies?
It's a wide range of things, but I've kind of narrowed it down over the years, more so into culture, philosophy, religion, and language, and
Okay,
how all of that combines to create history. Like, how does all of that interact with history? How do those motivations, or how do those interactions, um, in the context of interacting with other people, creates certain historical events, throughout time in history. So
okay.
it's not just the events themselves that interest me. I want to know, how the culture itself motivated a particular type of action that led
Okay.
to, other types of, historical events, and how that relates to us in
It,
many
it,
respects now.
is there one, let's say early on in your development, that was a ha-ha moment for you to say, wow, that sticks out in mind, that you can say, let me tell you a story that blew my mind, and then it grew from there?
I don't know if there's any single aha. It's more so ahas, you
Yeah.
know, uh, and the realization how this links to this and this links to that, you know. Um, and I would also say that uh, within that context, this is what's kind of led me into, because of course when you're doing Africana studies, Egyptology is part of that, those course materials.
Okay, let me
And
stop you there. You say Africana studies. Is that different than Black history studies, or is that different than
it
what's Africana studies?
well, they're different. There have been different labels given by different, people throughout time. And so when you're dealing with Africana studies, it's more so uh, a focus on African people globally throughout time.
Okay,
So this is
okay.
Africa's diaspora, wherever Black people are, that's Africana studies. Now I would be more specific in the context of saying that I'm more so an Africologist, and that is the African-centered study of African history and phenomena. Meaning, looking at this from the perspective of the African people on the ground, and looking at history through their lens, right? Versus trying to find universalisms, or from a Eurocentric standpoint and the like. It is on the ground, which is why, like, the language piece, for example, becomes critical, because you may say words, you may try to translate certain words that don't have the same effect or meaning. So, for example, like, I've been doing some research on the ancient Egyptian deity by the name of, Wasir. You may know him as Osiris, right?
Okay.
And while tracing the name, I've discovered that the root of the name derives from a verb meaning to erect to stand tall, to be firm, to be steady, stable, and the like. And in its nominal form, meaning a noun, um, it can mean pillar, it can mean tree, um, something, a wall, something that can lean on, that holds up anything, right? A standard, it could be a seat,
Okay.
anything that holds up and props up something, right? Um, and in many of these African languages that have this root, the word is used for king, right? So let's just, for the sake of argument, define Wasir as king.
Okay.
In our normal discourse, I would say, oh, it's just a word that means king. But what does king mean in the context of these African people?
Okay.
A king is a pillar. He is a tree. He is an entity from which the community or household can rely on, that they can lean on without falling.
Okay.
That's what a king is, and it comes from the same idea as like when in the ancient Egyptian records they'll call somebody a pillar of his mother or a pillar of a house. So you're the head of household. So this is what it means to be a head of household. This is what it means to be a father. You are the one that's supposed to be stable. You're supposed to bring stability and be able to hold up systems in the household. And so, this is different than just saying, oh, that's the king,
Okay.
because you're thinking a title, he just ruling and
Right.
making commands. It's like, no,
Right.
he's also a resource manager. He's the one that the community relies on for prosperity and stability of the kingdom. So that's what they're calling him, the pillar, not just the king.
I got you.
You
When
know what I'm
when
saying?
you do this research, for people who might be interested, how do you research stuff like this? Before the internet, I mean, I guess that might be. Or let's say with the internet,
Uh-huh.
there are books that one book leads to the next book, or you
Basically.
define the word. Yeah. How does that go?
Well, technically right now, and this contributes to why I'm trying to speak low but loud as possible.
Hmm.
Um, is because I'm in a library. I'm in the University of Pennsylvania Museum Library. So I spend a lot of time in libraries. So I, pick up books like, a grammar of the ancient Egyptian pyramid text, right? This may lead to something. There's another text on, the topographical biography of ancient Egyptian texts, right? I don't know if the light is shining, you know.
Yeah, I got
Then
you. I see it.
to, another one, this is a journal, so it's just different articles in a journal. And even ranging from, because now I'm going back into the computer science aspect, the other mathematics, language and logic in Egyptian and in general, right? Preparing, trying to, develop some software to do some comparative analysis between ancient Egyptian and other African languages,
Mm.
right? And so it is mainly, coming up with a research question based upon something that I've read, and then, coming to places like this and going through the library and or just following, you know, the bibliography. So,
Okay.
places things have
Okay.
footnotes, and
Yeah.
I'd be like,
Okay. I
that
see.
look like a book that I need. So I either buy it or I come, to the library and take a glance at it.
Now, those books that you just showed us, they're pretty thick books. You don't read the whole book, I would suspect.
Well, it
You'll read
depends.
something specific to the topic that you're interested in.
It depends. So, like for example, this is something that you would need to read the whole thing. But um, given that this is a journal, it's different articles. I won't read the whole thing. I'll just read the article that is specific to my needs.
Okay.
you know,
Okay.
and
Sure.
I
Sure.
try to read the whole text because there's information in there that you might miss that is critical for the analysis if you just, you know, go to the part that you think you need.
Oh, I got you. That makes
You know what I'm
sense.
saying? You
Yeah.
know, so and what I do, I make certain arguments, so I have to be prepared for those arguments. So I write as if I'm about to go debate somebody, right?
Oh,
And not that I'm going to do that, but I'm anticipating
yeah.
someone challenging, you know, the major themes for which I'm addressing.
Yeah.
So this requires me to get a firm grasp of the topic. So I just don't want to, you know, just cite a little part or just read a little part, because the book exists within a certain type of context, and I want to be able to articulate that context for which that particular citation in which I'm drawing from is set in. So so I can say, for example, that I agree with this, but I disagree with what they say over here in regards to this, and this is how this author is tying all this together, but this is how I'm doing it here. You know, if
Okay.
I don't fully agree. So in
Okay.
order for me to do that, it requires me to read at least a large chunk of the text, more than half or all of it.
Oh, now, because you say that the disciplines, the language and whatnot, there are books that will tell you what they meant by the word when and as a definition and make a chapter out of it or something like that.
Well, for example, the ancient Egyptian language is a dead language, meaning that there are no native speakers of the language of the pyramids, for example. So, you know, scholars who have dedicated their lives to the study of ancient Egyptian language, they will create dictionaries for which you can, you know, go to the dictionary and see what the meanings are. But again, there's a certain context in which these texts are written. And so, you know, normally, for example, here at the University of Pennsylvania, the Egyptology department is part of Near Eastern Studies. And so they gravitate and look towards the Middle East for answers regarding ancient Egyptian words, you know, and the like. when when Egypt was born on the continent of Africa by Africans who related to peoples as far south as South Africa, right? So a person like me will come into the fold and look over what they say, and then go back and do additional research to add clarity or to redefine um, terms and concepts for which they don't have the cultural tools to properly interpret, um, you know, regarding ancient Egyptian phenomena and concepts, right?
One of the guys that I think I alluded to earlier, he Chester Higgins out of New York, wrote a
Hmm.
book. Shucks, I can't remember the name of it, but he takes you inside the pyramids. And one of the things that he says is that their first religion, and hopefully I got this right, and maybe you know of this, was the God of Amen. Had you heard
Well,
that?
yes. First and foremost, you got to understand that ancient Egypt was basically like the New York of ancient times. So there was diverse people there. And so when you say that Amen was, for example, like the earliest conceptualization of deity, that may be true for a segment, and then
Okay,
it
okay.
spread out over
Oh, I
time.
got you. I got you.
But the Amen is a concept and deity that is still worshipped today in Rwanda, Uganda, and
Oh,
Central Africa.
really?
Yeah, and and again, it comes from the same. I don't want to get too deep into the linguistics.
Yeah,
It
yeah.
technically comes from the same root as the word wasir, uh, but It means ultimately something that is stable, something that is rock. This is where you get the word amen from in Hebrew, and not directly from ancient Egypt. Both terms come from a nominal form of a word meaning a rock, right? And um and it's this rock, this concept of a rock being stable, being firm, being established. And you know, when you can hide under rocks or pull rocks over in a cave, it's that far back, it goes that far back in time, that you get the concept of being a surety or safety, right? So when you say I'm in Hebrew, you know, it has these meanings in terms of being safe, in terms of being
Oh,
well, in terms of being so be it. So be it meaning it's a sure thing. It is so,
okay,
it is solid, it is stable, but it ultimately
okay,
comes from a word meaning a rock. But in Africa, it's a rock, a pillar, a tree, anything that is strong, planted, and stable. You know,
okay.
that becomes the metaphor to describe a characteristic of deity. So, you know, when you're talking about, you know, the most high, whatever kind of language that you use, you're saying that this is something that, you know, is stable, that I can rely on, that I can lean on without falling,
Okay.
you know. So,
Is the first language, uh, was it just symbols and that kind of thing, and then it became to be letters?
well, language and writing are two different things.
Okay,
So, with in terms of language, we have hypotheses of how the first language emerged with Homo sapiens sapiens. Um, but that's, at this point, this is all speculation. But
sure,
when it
sure.
but when it comes to writing, we're a bit more sure of how that emerges, and it comes, of course, first starting off as pictographs, symbols, and then, you know, later on applying phonetic values to those symbols, and then organizing them to reflect the natural language. And this is how we get the writing that we get today.
And we would attribute a lot of that to Black folks.
Of course, even when you think of uh, the Hebrew writing, right? You know, the very script that became the Hebrew letters come out of the ancient Egyptian hieroglyphs. So you're
Oh,
when you write in Hebrew, you're writing in a different form of hieroglyphs, right? And there's been a few more that they've added, because it actually comes out of the Phoenician, Canaanite, and then they've adopted it and did more, and then uh, the Greeks took it from them, and then the Romans took it from them, and each time that, you know, a group adopted the script, they simplified it in a manner in which you know. So technically, you know, you was to write something on your screen, all that in the background, the love Black people, the subscribe, all that is written in a form that ultimately goes to many of the hieroglyphic graphemes.
oh. Is Hebrew the first language or the first writing? Or what is?
Nah, Hebrew
Okay.
is a dialect of the Canaanite language,
Oh,
and
okay.
so now every culture seems to be ethnocentric, right? So life emerges with them, language emerges with them, and so you get stories like that all across the world, right? Like their language is the first language, and you know, because that's
Okay.
all they know. But no, there's no evidence that uh, Hebrew, for example, is the oldest language. Uh,
But okay, now excuse me for not knowing this, but the Bible is written in Hebrew. Is that correct?
well, the Old Testament is
Yes.
written in Hebrew, and I think parts of it is written in Aramaic, and then the New Testament is written in Greek.
Where is Hebrew? What is Hebrew?
Well, Hebrew is the language of the Hebrew people,
and they're out of
and
Africa.
well, uh, it's one of them. It's a bit more nuanced
Oh, really?
than
Okay.
that, because the Hebrew, it's a generic term. It
Oh.
it 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 it, it is synonymous with uh Eber. They were called the Eber Adim, and Eber, uh what are you talking about? Abraham, or you're talking about uh Abel, for example.
Mm-hmm.
They all
Mm-hmm.
come from the same root, but that name is also the same name as the Berbers, or the Fulani, or the Boboro. They're all Fulani folks, Fulbe, right? The Afar people. Like, these are variations of the names of groups who have been traveling in and out of Africa for thousands of years, because they were nomadic pastoralists. So they were always on the move, looking for green pastures for their flocks. And they would
Okay.
seasonally move, and they would just go back and forth through the Middle East, through North Africa, through West Africa, on back, and through Egypt. And so during that time, whether it's through wars or whether it's through, I guess, friendly acquisition, they would marry women, and intermingle with women. Uh, and certain people would settle in certain places, and you just know their names differently. So they look a little different when they're in the Middle East versus, of course, when they come into West Africa as the Fulani, the Fulbe, and the Pool is a variation of the name. Like, these are all the same name for this group of people who were nomadic um, pastoralists. So
You this is deep stuff. Uh you had to start off first of all figuring out how to even pronounce some of these words.
yeah, and I'm probably not even pronouncing them the exact way that a native would pronounce it, but yeah, it studying, like, in those early days in the late '90s, the works of like Sheikh Anta Diop and Dr. Theophilo Benga, and uh, you know, inspired me to really start looking into the language piece, because language is the carrier of culture. So where there is the absence of artifacts, you can still do an archaeological dig by examining the language in comparison to related languages,
Oh,
right?
okay.
It'll still tell you certain aspects about their history, and their way of being and the like. And so, it's in my opinion, it is essential that you combine linguistics with archaeology.
Okay.
And when you're trying to get um, a full picture, of a people's history.
Do you have a go-to story that you tell people? Let's say just kind of hanging around some folks who don't know anything, like let's say like myself, that a short story that says this is what I've come to conclude. Anything on the language that deals with how Black folks evolved, how sophisticated they were in their evolution, and how it even may be still used today. Is there a story like that?
I don't know if there's a story. It
Yeah,
really
yeah,
kind of
yeah,
depends on how we even got into the conversation,
yeah.
and what I can draw from that is relative to whatever it is that we're talking about.
Sure.
But yeah, I mean, it's all coming together even as we speak. And what I've come to know and to understand over time is our origins in Central East Africa, and are spreading into Central Africa and into the Nile, and through the Nile into the Middle East, into Europe, into India and the like. But what I'm more so concerned in is, again, what are the motivations for the movement? What are the modes of production and subsistence strategies that our African ancestors were involved in, and how does that play a role in the kind of religion, in the kind of culture, in the kind of interpersonal um, interactions, rules for marriage, what are the roles of the, men, women, and children, not only in the household, but in terms of family, in terms of society. Like, these are all the things that interest me. I'm looking at the
Okay.
totality, and how
Okay.
does that change, you know, uh, given certain environments, like when they become pastoralists, how are all of those factors different from when they are farmers on the edge of a forest or in the plain, or when they
Okay.
are hunter gatherers? How, how do they see life and deal with what it means to be human, from an African sense? And that's ultimately what it means. That's ultimately what I'm getting at, is trying to figure out, how do different African groups define what it means to be human, and
Oh
how
man.
do they
Okay.
express themselves, given certain challenges, right? And that, your question, even though you're trying to narrow it down, is
Yeah, yeah,
really
yeah, yeah.
broad, and trying to just, uh you would have to ask me
Yeah,
something specific, and then
yeah,
I
I
could
got
go,
you. Let me ask you this. What you're doing in the field of study, is it called, is there a title for it?
it is
Because I thought I saw kinetic by your name. Is that right, or that's not right?
comedic,
Yes,
kinetic or comedic.
kinetic.
Well, some people would define, they'll redefine Egyptology as Kemetic studies, because
Okay,
Kemet being
okay, okay. Kemet,
Kemet
right,
being
right,
one of
right.
the names of ancient Egypt. But the broader field of study is Africology. Um, but under that, and it's ironic that you asked that, there really is no title for what I do. So I had to invent a field of study, and that's something that I'm currently working on, in terms of trying to define, set the parameters, and for this new field of study, which I call into com.
Okay,
So, N as in Nancy, T as in Terrence, U as in up, right? Into, and then com,
okay,
KAM. So,
okay,
and this is the, African centered study of Nile River civilizations, right? So, as I mentioned earlier, when they try to study ancient Kemet, they do it, they put it in Near Eastern studies. But then at the same time, they'll quote one of the Greek philosophers who says that Egypt is a gift of the Nile. Well, the Nile doesn't run into the Middle East. The Nile don't run into Europe. The Nile is the longest river in Africa.
right.
And all of these cultures contribute to this history and study. And they neglect it by trying to take it out of that context. So to define a new field of study, that's essentially what we're doing. We're reorienting the study of African people along that history, along that river, and seeing how those interactions came to produce history. What
Okay,
are those motivations? What are those ideas? Because, again, for example, with the deity Wasir, or the god Amen, right? Like these are concepts that are still existing today, all in this area. Now, you mentioned, the strong, for example. in the title of your show.
Right.
And there's a word in Chiluba Bantu, which is in the Democratic Republic of Congo, called Nkole or Nkola. Matter of fact, I've suggested this as a name for African American people, the Ba Nkole, the Ba Nkola.
Okay.
And it's a word that comes from a verb meaning to grow, to expand, to erect.
Okay.
Everything that I said earlier. And then in nominal form, it means strong. It means powerful, an eminent or powerful person. It can also be used as a descriptor or a name for deity, Nkole, God.
Okay.
This is the historical root that gives us the word Netcher in ancient Egyptian, which is defined as divinity, God, or whatnot, but it's also defined as strong, powerful pillar. It's the same word. It's the same word that when palatalized gives us the word Osir. In another direction, it gives us the word Amen and Iwin or whatnot. It's this concept. This is one of those overarching things that I found when studying these African languages and cultures, is that this concept of power is at the center of the philosophy, the culture, and way of being. Now I'm going to use a term from the Yoruba language called Ashe, right? So for African people, God is everything and all things at once.
Okay.
I wrote a book in 2015 called Where is the Love?
Yeah. You
How
don't have a copy
language.
of it there with you?
No, because I'm in the
Yeah.
I'm
You
in
don't
the
have a copy.
university.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
But it's called Where is the Love? How language can reorient us back to love's purpose. And in that, I traced the origin of the word love because I wanted to know at the time, is there an equivalent concept of romance in an African context? Like, this is the basis of what love is. Again, it comes from that concept of ashe, of exchanging, vitality with one another. It's ultimately, love is open-hearted sharing. And so, like, this gives you a better sense of how African people understood relationships. Because if you're coming into a marriage, you're coming into the service business. The quality of your love is proportional to your ability to serve and to share.
Oh, that's
And
deep, man. Okay, I love it. Yeah, I
and
got you.
and this is the basis of African hospitality and culture, because it all comes from this understanding of the interaction, exchanging of vital force, of vital energy. So you could share vital force by just saying, how you doing, King? What's up,
Yeah.
good brother?
Yeah.
Because
Okay.
you're sending a sign, because our greetings are blessings. We're blessing you with um with vitality. So like this is, I call this concept kimoyo. And moyo is a Bantu word meaning, it literally means the heart, but it has a derivative meanings of spirit, of vitality, of life. And it's also used as a greeting. So they say, moyo. So what they're doing is they're sending blessings. They're exchanging life. They're sending life to you. They're sending the heart moyo. So,
Okay.
and then there's an aspect of it in terms of character.
Are you if you don't mind, I say, are you a scholar?
Yes,
Okay, so we were a historian.
you can say,
Okay.
I'm more so like, I just don't, I don't write history books. I don't do that. It's more so I'm examining concepts, philosophy, religion, culture, and showing how that relates to history.
Oh,
But
okay.
more so how we can make history with this information. And so it's coming from the premise that because in recent times in European and Arab colonialism, we've lost a sense of what these ideas and concepts were within a total cultural context.
All right.
And so uh what I'm doing is going back and retrieving
Okay.
that so that we can, rebuild our structures, especially for us in the diaspora, and so that we can utilize this to, for example, um, build a strong economic future. So you have your book,
Okay.
the Black Business Book, right?
Right. Right.
This is at the heart of it, because at the end of the day, when I'm talking about kimoyo and the exchanging of vitality or whatnot, economics is part of that process.
Okay.
And so
Okay.
part of this study is to help Black people, African people, value each other and to be valuable
I
and to
love it.
add value in our lives,
I
because
love
that
it.
is the basis of all economic systems.
All right. Let me ask you this question as we almost come to a close.
Uh,
Is there an association that you would be involved in? I mean, I know like a Sala could be one of them, but is there one that deals with the topic that you're talking about today?
um, Not necessarily in the manner in which I've articulated, but there are various groups that just kind of do this,
Okay, that's what I'm
without
asking. Yeah,
without all the necessary
yeah, yeah, yeah.
historical knowledge, you know. So, like when we're talking about the study of classical African history, there's ASCAC, for example.
Okay,
Um, and there is, which I'm a part of,
okay.
as far as ASCAC is concerned. Um,
What is that?
just
What's what is the name ASCAC stand for?
it is the Association for the Study of Classical African Civilizations.
Okay, I love it.
It
Okay,
started in the mid '80s by Dr. Ben, Dr. Clark, uh, Milana Karenga, Dr. Charles Finch, Dr.
okay,
Ricketti Amen, others. Like they're like the foundation of this particular organization.
okay.
And whether you're in a fraternal organization, like I'm a member of Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated, um, whether it's like I have my own little research study group that I belong to. There's only three
Okay.
of us.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
uh so with brother Wujaru Iri Ma'at and another brother by the name of Sajedi Ankara. And
Okay.
so we kind of get together on occasion and share information, ask questions, and tackle research questions and the
Y-
like.
y- your name is it what your name is that Egyptian or what's the history to that?
Yes, these both the names are ancient Egyptian. So I'm born Harold Johnson, and
Hmm.
again out of Jacksonville, Florida.
Right.
However, in 2002, when I pledged Alpha Phi Alpha, my line name that was given to me was Imhotep, and is he, who comes in peace,
That's what
right?
Emotech means. He who comes
Correct,
in peace. Okay, I
correct.
love it.
And um, and I added the name Asar. Now, at the time, I didn't have the linguistic, uh, acumen that I do now,
Right.
and that's kind of how people kind of pronounce the name back then, versus Wasir or Osir.
Mm.
But so I already gave you the definition of what Osir is
Right.
and Wasir. So, but I still keep the old pronunciation because
Okay.
I have text and stuff already written
Sure.
with it.
Sure.
So, um, so yes, they both uh, are oriented in terms of the ancient Egyptian language.
You told us about one book. Have you written other books?
Yes, I've written 2 volumes called Aluja, and I told you about Where's the Love, How Language Can Reorient Us Back to Love's Purpose. There's also a book called Nesubiti, King in Ancient Egyptian. And I deal with, you know, a lot of this concept of what it means to be king. And
Okay.
that's something, and I just want to pause there. You know, I've been doing this kind of research for so long, and I just trusted that once I get enough information, I'll know what to do with it
Okay.
outside of just write text about it.
Yes,
And
yes.
now I'm coming into, like, I've reached that point. Like, I know what to do with this information,
Okay.
and I'm, you know, create organizations, systems, and programs to teach specifically young, you know, Black men what does it mean to be king, and
Okay.
everything that you
I
know,
love
derives
it.
from that. And
I
so,
love it.
but Nesubiti, King in Ancient Egyptian, uh that was 2016, and then Aluja was 2020. There's a book that I'm coming out with now. I'm waiting because I just submitted an article um, to a journal, and so I want to go through that process before releasing the book. But it's on the book is part of a 3-volume series that's coming out called Race and Identity in Ancient Egypt. And so
Mm.
the first one is going to be dealing with the etymology of the place named Kemet. The second volume is going to be an edited work. So there's going to be other scholars that contribute to the text, not just me.
Okay. Okay.
And so we're going to be tackling the issues of, you know, the race and identity question of the ancient Egyptians. And then in the third volume, I'm just going to be um, putting the raw ancient text with their hieroglyphs, and or if they're in Greek, the Greek with the transliterations and translations,
Mm.
describing the ancient Egyptians or giving vital information regarding the ancient Egyptians in terms of their appearance and culture and the like. So the third book's really going to be mainly kind of a reference book, but
Okay.
so that's what I'm working on as we
Did,
speak.
do you have a website that people can follow you at or something of that sort? Because I'm plugging you, man.
Yes,
Let's plug. What? How do we do something to, you know, whatever you're doing to be a, know what you're doing. Go ahead.
yes. There is a sarimhotep.com. So
Okay.
ASARIMHOTEP.com.
Okay.
And then I'm on most social media platforms. You can just type in my name and I'll come up. And also maduindelapress.com. So
Okay.
I've also started my own publishing company, and you know, there's works that I publish, of course, of my work, but I've also published others' work, and
Okay.
working on that as well. So like, I have a book
Okay.
mainly from Congo speakers, uh, and you know, so the first text is called Prayer in Africa.
Mm.
I translated this from French into English, um, and the author is Dr. Palaba Nsamba, and and then the second book is Muntu, uh, God's Special Creation by Dr. Chilemalema Mukenge, also out of the Democratic Republic of Congo. So they're both from the Baluba people in the Democratic
Okay.
Republic of Congo. And I'm working on translating a text from French into English. It's a linguistic text by our good brother Jean-Claude Mboli, and Dr. McKinge has also just submitted. Well, we're working on because it's a children's book, um, and that we're working on. So we just started this process.
Okay.
So it's
Okay.
going to be a coloring. So these are all in English, and I'm waiting on Dr. Shoramaka Keita, who's a biological anthropologist, to finish. I've gotten the first draft, but there's some stuff that he's adding on to, so we can start the
Okay.
editing process, dealing with the the bioanthropology of ancient Egyptian history,
Oh,
and culture. So like these are some of the things
I
that
love
is
it.
coming, that is already published and is going to be published.
I
So
love it. Yeah, that's all right, brother. Well, you making your mark on the world. Did you? I mean, is this? I mean, you've been at it long enough. You're not surprised, but you proud of yourself, aren't you? At some point of how you started somewhere, you remember the things, you wrote them down, and you keep
mhm.
tracking along, and getting somewhere else, and being able then to express this to people.
Yes. Well, while I am, appreciative of what I've been able to accomplish, I know that I could have done a lot more in my earlier days if I was, would have been focused in certain areas. And there's just so much more that I want to do,
Oh,
so I don't
really?
want to diminish
Yeah,
what I've
yeah, yeah,
already
yeah,
done.
yeah,
But when
yeah.
I think about like the bigger plans, there's really a long way to go. So I'm just starting that process. I'm trying to.
Okay, let me ask you to do this. And what's your elevator speech of what you want people to get out of what you do?
Yeah, the only thing that I can say is it's not my saying, but you know, we are the ones we've been waiting on, and
Love it.
and that's
Love
more
it.
so what I'm trying to get across. Like, Marcus Garvey is one who said, "What people have done, people can do." So if you know that you're responsible for these major contributions to world history, you can do that again, but you can also do it better.
I love it. I got you. Hey,
You know.
everybody, you had strong inspirations, and we went deep. We went deep on you, my friends. I
Mhm.
told you was gonna love this. And we went deep because it's a broad picture, and because it's history, and you have to dig between the layers, between the words, to get and conclude something.
Hmm.
And this guy concludes things based on all this research that comes about. Come on, people, hit the subscribe button on Strong Inspirations. Hit the like button on this video because there is no love button. Hit the notifications bell for when the videos come out. Go to his website, everybody. Follow this brother. Stay in, buy his books. Lift him up because he's on the side of right. He's spending his time because he loves doing it to enlighten the community at large. That's a mantra in itself. You enjoy doing it, but there's a bigger mission somewhere along the line, and and it has manifested itself already, and will continue to do such. And so I say this, and I mean this with all sincerity. I want you to stay strong, stay safe, stay on your grind. I love what you're doing. I love you winning.
Appreciate it. The same to you.
And then check this out, my friend. In that black and gold, you see it in the black and gold.
Indeed.
Yeah, that's who we come from. I'm in that same frat, everybody. I'm in that group with all them distinguished folk out there in the black and gold. That's it. That's how we do.
Exactly.
Is there can you close us out on in a Hebrew language or others that you might speak of how they might have said best wishes to someone, goodbye, that kind of thing?
I don't know how they would do it in Hebrew, but again in Chiluba, it is more so moyo, and how I greet you is the same way I leave you. I wish you nothing but life, prosperity, health, and eternal flourishing. And
There you go.
and so in ancient Egypt, you know, that greeting for the king would be Ankh Uja Sened, you know, and in Kikongo, you would translate that to Inkwa, Ngolo, Vimpi. So Inkwa, Ngolo, Vimpi, you know,
Love it.
life, prosperity, and health.
There you go. That's the way to close it out, everybody. We coming at you from around the world with scholars on the show. Thank you, my brother.
Appreciate you.
I
Thank you for
appreciate you
having
coming
me.
on, and I'll say this publicly. Anytime you want to share something else, you know that we'll talk again. Come on back on the show, because I know 1 hour ain't enough for you by no stretch of the imagination. And so when you got more books or something like that, here we are. We plugging. When you do some speaking somewhere, send it to me and I'll blast it out. All that stuff, because I want more people to hear about you. Everybody, I'll say in the good old black and gold, goodbye. 06. Thanks, man.
We'll tap peace.
Yeah.